Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talk About Random. And yes, we're still talking about films this week. We have a very special guest today, Sissy. Yay!
Cece, woo! Welcome!
Hello.
And before I forget, this is actually the very last episode of the film series. So, if you are tired of us, of occupating your life with a film genre every week, don't you worry, that'll all be over soon. But yeah, that's besides the point. So, would you like to introduce today's genre, Cece?
Yeah, okay, so today we are going to be talking about a genre that has overtaken the film industry in recent years, known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it.
Ooh, superheroes.
That sounds like a very fancy full name. Cinematic.
Just out of curiosity, who's your favorite character in the Marvel universe?
Mine. That's a very difficult choice for me to make. I'm gonna have to go with Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff. Yep. If you didn't know, she recently got her own solo movie called Black Widow, and it's one of my favorite MCU movies. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. What about you, Charlotte?
I'm not that obsessed with the Marvel universe, so I didn't really watch all of the movies, but
Definitely more than my number, which is 0. I shouldn't be here right now.
but I will nominate Captain America.
That's fair.
Okay.
He is really the face of the franchise.
Yes, as he is.
And if you're if you're new to this series, we all know that Charlotte has
I don't care about character writings, to be honest. I genuinely just like your face. But moving on. So Sissy has prepared a list for us, and in which we're gonna discuss, comment, roast, or recommend. So let's start off.
All right.
What's your first movie?
Yeah.
So, we're going in, well, when I made this list, I kind of went in release chronological order. So, my first movie is going to be Iron Man, that came out in 2008. So, this movie is directed by Jon Favreau, starring Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Jon Favreau himself as Happy Hogan, who's like Tony's assistant slash secretary, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, who's the love interest, and Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, who's the antagonist.
This summary sounds so professional. It's so unlike our channel style.
I wrote notes. I actually made notes for my guest appearance. I don't know what I was supposed to do, okay?
The most prepared I'm the worst communication. Okay, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad, but I'm not very specific in my instructions.
Because when I had to introduce movies in the previous episode, I'm I guess maybe I'll just search it up.
There's
Wait
this
a second.
And then half of them were just me searching up
Yeah.
the summaries on Wikipedia, which was very convenient. But can we have a brief plot summary for me, who's very uneducated with Marvel?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, sure.
superhero
Okay. So, basically, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is this, billionaire CEO of this company called Stark Industries, right, that was founded by his father. And at the beginning of the movie, the company is a weapons contractor, which means they make weapons for war, and they earn a lot of money through that. So then, that's why at the beginning, Tony is in Afghanistan, because he's showing off this new, really crazy missile that he made. But then he gets kidnapped by this terrorist organization, and they lock him in a cave and force him to make weapons for them. Instead of making weapons, he makes the first version of the Iron Man suit, which is this big, giant steel thing that looks nothing like the later versions, but he was stuck in a cave, so yeah. Okay? So then he gets out of the cave, right? But when he gets back, his experiences in Afghanistan made him realize that maybe he shouldn't be making these, deadly weapons all the time. So he gave up making weapons. But that kind of made this other guy, Obadiah Stane, really mad, since they were like the joint managers of the company. And so Stane wanted to keep making money because weapons make a lot of money. So he kind of cut Tony off from the company, and Tony wanted access back into the company. So like they had a fight, and Stane got his hands on the original Iron Man suit, and they had like a fight in the sky. Blah blah blah.
Wow.
But then,
Wow.
and then Tony won. End of story. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. The end.
And then there's Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 and Avengers, and then
That
it
is
just
true.
keeps
So
going on.
it's really never the end. This is only just the beginning, you know?
Wow. So, what would you say is like the biggest point, I guess, that evolved throughout the series? Well, obviously, apparently the costume evolved, right?
Oh yeah.
Madly.
Man, the costumes are really different. Like, especially
Uh-huh.
well, okay, Iron Man's suit more or less looks the same every time. It's just like a newer tech version of it. 'Cause in the first movie, he wears one that's super mechanical, so you can see all the parts moving, but by the time Avengers Endgame rolls around, which we are going to get to, then at that point his suit is like this nanotech that just kind of expands over his entire body.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's kind of like how society's technology is evolving. It's like going along with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like before it was all huge, chunky mechanical machines, and now it's like very tiny, condensed, I don't know, like little circuits
Smooth.
and robots and all
Smooth
that.
technology, very sleek looking. Yeah, it's nice.
Wow. What would you say? What would you miss? Like, is there something that changed in the original one that they got rid of?
Well, that's a good point. It's kind of like something that exists in all of their solo movies, but doesn't exist in the wider movies, like the actual Avengers movies, because there are too many characters. So in the solo movies, there's actually character development. Yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Because, well, it makes sense that in the bigger movies with, like, 6 main characters, technically they don't really have the time to develop all of them. But then in, like, the solo Iron Man movie, for example, his character development is very obvious, because he goes from this, like, billionaire who doesn't care about the people that he's hurting with his weapons manufacturing to somebody who flies around in a suit of armor trying to do good.
Yeah.
Tony Stark has a heart.
Exactly. See, that's what it says on the display case for his first ever arc reactor. Oh yeah, I don't think I
Okay.
explained the arc reactor. Did I? I don't. No. Okay, so when he got kidnapped by those like terrorist people, he got like blown up, and a bunch of shrapnel, like tiny pieces of shrapnel, went into his chest, and you can't. Back then, the surgery wasn't good enough. Also, he was in a cave, so like there wasn't really a person. There was a person there, and the doctor tried to help him, but he couldn't get all the shrapnel out. And basically, if he hadn't put a giant piece of metal in his chest, like a magnet, to attract the shrapnel away from his heart, because if he hadn't, all of the shrapnel would have circulated in his bloodstream and into his heart, which is bad for your heart, because if there's tiny pieces of metal in there, you're gonna die. And so
Science class with Cece.
biology, am I right? Don't put metal into your chest.
Why go to school when you can listen to our very educational podcast?
Yeah.
Just kidding, go to school.
No, school education is important. If you listen to our podcast, you'll probably get yourself killed.
Hey, that's
Oh,
not
my bad.
Good.
I am not even one of the hosts of this podcast. Alright, but yeah, so the arc reactor is basically what he installed to power the magnet to keep it working. Yeah, so that's Iron Man.
All right, let's move on to the next one, or else this is going to go on for 2 hours, which I don't mind, but I think everyone's going to click off by then, so let's go.
That's fair. Okay, so next we have another solo movie. Thor came out in 2011. So this one is directed by Kenneth Branagh, starring Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, Stellan Skarsgård as Dr. Eric Selvig, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Now, okay, I'll give a plot summary for this one as well. So
Okay.
basically, Thor is the legendary Norse god of thunder, and he lives in this place called Asgard, which is like an island floating in the middle of space somewhere. And then one day, okay, so at the beginning of the movie, he's this very proud, arrogant kind of guy. And he's about to become the king of Asgard because his dad, Odin, is gonna retire. But Odin doesn't think he's gonna make a good king because Thor is all like fighty, punchy, no talk. So basically, stuff happens and then Odin banishes Thor onto Earth. So at this point, Thor also has this really neat hammer called Mjolnir. It's a really powerful hammer.
yeah.
And Odin, at this point, puts, like, a spell on it that's, he who be worthy, something, wield this hammer shall wield the power of Thor, basically. And then he sends the hammer back down to Earth, and it's like a test, because Thor has to go through enough character development to become worthy for the hammer so that he can pick it back up again. Because at this point, the hammer is sitting in a crater in New Mexico, and nobody can pick it up because nobody is worthy. Okay, and then, so Thor is banished to Earth, and then that's where his brother comes in, Loki. Loki has always been jealous of Thor, because Thor is, like, the golden boy, literally because his hair is, like, blonde. And so then Loki takes this chance to become king of Asgard, because Odin goes into this, like, thing called Odin sleep, which is what he does, apparently, every couple thousand of years to not die. I don't know. I don't know about mythology. It doesn't make sense.
That's sudden.
Yeah. So Loki becomes king of Asgard, and, well, he tries to kill Thor with this giant robot, and Thor sacrifices himself to save his friends, like his love interest, Jane Foster. And this act of sacrifice made him worthy, so he summoned the hammer and he killed the giant robot. The end. Happily ever after.
Okay.
And then there was Thor 2 and Thor 3, I guess. And then it just goes on and on.
And the
on.
rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is another one of those good movies with character development and stuff. And it's also one of the, just like, because Iron Man and Thor are probably some of the most foundational movies that you have to watch for the MCU because it sets up some of the core characters. So yeah, that's all
Right.
I'm going to say about that.
Cool.
Yay.
Nice. Yay. Charlotte, do you have anything to
I
add?
feel like the cast of Thor is, to me, the most visually appealing, like, cast in the Marvel, like, universe.
I totally agree. Like, you have Chris Hemsworth, right? And Natalie Portman.
And
We
Tom
can't forget about
Hiddleston.
Oh, exactly. We can't forget about that.
Okay, moving on.
Okay.
Next we have
Next on my list is the first Avengers movie, Marvel's The Avengers,
Ooh.
2012, which was like 9
Wow.
years ago, which is kind of scary.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Directed by Joss Whedon, starring a bunch of people. There's already too many in this movie. Just go watch it if you want to know who stars in it.
Oh yeah, I can put some in the captions.
Yeah.
Basically
But
everyone.
basically everyone. Well, honestly, not as many as Infinity War and Endgame, but we'll get there eventually. But yeah, so the first Avengers movie is bringing everybody together, right? So at this point, Loki has made a deal with this guy called Thanos. He's going to be important later. And so Loki is trying to take over and become the king of the planet Earth, while Thanos, I'm not sure, we don't know what he wants at this point. So Loki has access to this giant army, and he's going to use this magical stone called the Tesseract to create a giant portal to bring the giant army to Earth and destroy Earth. Well, become the king of Earth. Force the people to subjugate to him. So then,
Violent.
yeah. Then Nick Fury, Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., brings together a bunch of heroes called the Avengers. Somebody has to die for all of the Avengers to finally get together because, you know, their friend dying finally brought them together as a team. They weren't really working that well together. But then they have like this big epic battle with a bunch of computer-generated images in New York City, and they capture Loki, and yeah, the end.
Woo! Round of applause.
See, this is what I mean about how the Avengers movies don't have that much substance to them. Like, it's just big scenes, but not many of them are actually important. That's why the summary was like, that was basically a good plot summary of the movie. That's all that went down.
Yeah, but hey, that's why you need actors, right? You need to find the good, handsome, beautiful actors.
You want to look at them
in order to get people's
Yeah.
attention.
Oh, like that scene at the beginning where Chris Evans, Captain America, he's not wearing a shirt and he's punching a punching bag. It's nice.
Charlotte's interested.
I think that scene also went on the Ellen show, and then everyone watched it, and I think Scarlett Johansson had to rate him or something. I forgot, but like it was.
Oh wow. Of course they would make her do that, but yeah, wouldn't that be kind of strange? I don't know. They're just
Very
friends,
strange.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Co-worker.
anyway, that's the first Avengers movie.
Anyway.
It's still a good movie though, so
Yeah.
watch it if you can. Definitely recommend.
Rated out of 10.
7.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly the number I was thinking. 7.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Marvel fans think alike. I can't relate.
Because like Avenger 1 is kind of like mediocre.
Yeah.
It's just mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
I like the second one better. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the second one was actually my first Marvel movie. I watched it on a plane,
Oh,
and I
see.
decided to watch like the movies other than the second one. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like a guide to the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
It has like this special bond with me.
Well, Age of Ultron, which is the second Avengers movie, is also on the list, but it is on the roasting list, not the praise list.
Agree to disagree. Agree to
oh.
disagree.
Okay, but
Let's hear
moving
why.
on. The next movie that I have is Guardians of the Galaxy, which is kind of maybe less well known. Actually, nowadays I'm not sure. The entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is well known nowadays, but Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't take place on Earth, and it doesn't have any of the main 6 Avengers from the first movie. So, yeah, it came out in 2014. It's directed by James Gunn. Stars Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, the main character, Zoe Saldana as Gamora, Dave Bautista as Drax, Bradley Cooper as the voice of Rocket, Vin Diesel as the voice of Groot, and Lee Pace as Ronan, who's the villain. So, plot summary? Yes.
Sure.
Alright, so Peter Quill is the only human that basically appears in the entire series. He, well, okay, he's only half human, technically. When he was young, his mom died and he got abducted by aliens, and he was raised by aliens in space. And
Wow.
he joined this, like, space gang called the Ravagers, because that's what his adoptive father was a part of. Okay, so at the beginning, he's trying to get this, mysterious orb from a ruined building in some unknown planet, and he gets this orb and he wants to sell it to someone, but then this strange green-skinned lady appears and kicks him in the face. Yes, Gamora, and because she's also trying to get the mysterious orb, and at this point we still don't know what's in the orb. And then this talking raccoon with a giant tree also appear, and they're trying to get Peter Quill because he has a bounty on his head. And basically all of them get caught by the space police and they get sent to prison. And then they escape prison because, I don't know, it wasn't very hard for them apparently. And then while they escape prison, they also bring along this giant dude named Drax who wants revenge for
His family.
yeah, because his wife and kids were killed by this guy called Thanos. Thanos is actually Gamora's adoptive father. She has daddy issues because Thanos is a bad father.
These summaries.
I love the summary.
They take,
these are the
the
best
orb,
part.
and everybody, the gang, goes to this planet. Oh no, not this planet. They go to this place called Nowhere, which is spelled Knowhere. So it's like nowhere, but instead of N-O, no, it's I know.
K-N-O.
You know? Yeah.
Ah,
But yeah, so
fascinating.
apparently Nowhere is the head of an ancient celestial god. Anyway, they go into Nowhere, they find this guy called the Collector. The Collector explains that what is inside the mysterious orb is a purple stone, and this stone is called the Power Stone. and it's one of the 6 Infinity Stones, and it's super, super powerful. And that's why all the people want to get it. So then the bad guy, Ronan, ends up getting the Power Stone. And then he uses the Power Stone to almost destroy a planet, but the Guardians save him by having a dance battle. The end. Yeah.
That's that. I might go watch that.
I know, right? And see what
Just for the
The
dance.
movie has this like 90s, 80s like jazzy,
know.
punky vibe.
Exactly. All the music is like that too.
Disco?
Because Peter Quill left Earth in the 90s, and he had like 2 cassette players with 90s music. So he's just been listening to that for his entire life, because he never went back to Earth to be refreshed with like pop culture and stuff.
Ooh.
Retro.
I'd like to get his opinion on music now.
Yeah. So, not to say we're not saying anything about music now though. No.
Oh, no, yeah.
No hate, no hate.
No comment.
But yeah, so Guardians, I guess I would also recommend it. It's a great movie, really funny. And also it kind of, in terms of the greater MCU, it brings it beyond Earth, basically. That's what it does. It brings it into the universe, into space, because Thanos and technically Thor and Loki, they're not from Earth, they're from like random floating islands in space. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
All right.
Nice.
We have 2 more movies on the praise list, or technically 3, but 2 of them I'm talking about together because they fit. So those 2 are Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Big
Whoa.
movies now.
I remember when Endgame came out, virtually everybody watched it.
Yeah, well, no, Endgame didn't come out virtually. Endgame was 2019. That was pre-COVID.
No. I mean, almost
Oh,
everybody.
Yes.
Like,
See-
that's what I mean by virtually.
see,
Yeah. Almost
I
everybody.
see. The word virtually. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I can't be
trauma.
the only one being emotional over like the third
Yeah.
movie, because like I cried so hard.
For
But,
Infinity War. Yeah. Well, basically, anyway, so Infinity War was 2018, Endgame 2019. They were both directed by the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, and they star a bunch of people that I'm not going to list out. But yeah, so Infinity War and Endgame are the big ending movies of the entire saga up to this point. And yes, Infinity War was incredibly sad, because it's like, that's why I consider both of them as like one movie, because Endgame is the one with the happy ending. Kind of. A bunch of people die. Spoiler alert in case you haven't seen Endgame, but if, I don't know, maybe you've been living under a rock like Brianna.
Hey!
But,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't blame you guys for saying that about me, because, it's true. I listen to, 16th century music.
Well, okay, no, we do that
Not
too.
old.
But we watch 21st century movies. I don't think there were movies in the
Oh,
16th
dear.
century.
Oh, definitely not. All film came late.
Yeah. But, okay,
Anyway.
I guess, in short, Infinity War is the beginning of the fight with Thanos, and Endgame is the end of it. So in Infinity War, it starts off with Thanos trying to finish collecting all the Infinity Stones. So, as I mentioned previously, there are 6, and he has this special thing called the Infinity Gauntlet, and if you put all 6 stones in the gauntlet, and then snap, then 50% of the population of the entire universe disappears. So he wants to do this because of eco-terrorism. He thinks that there are not enough resources in the universe for the amount of people that exists, which, I mean, he's not wrong, but genocide. Genocide isn't exactly the best solution. See, I still like his original motivation in the comics much better. So, in the comics, Thanos originally wanted to kill half the universe because he had a crush on Death.
What?
Yes, he wanted to bang Lady Death. So, Death is a person in the Marvel Comics universe, right? And she's a lady. And Thanos thought she was real hot. So Thanos thought, maybe if I give her a lot of death, she will pay attention
Notice
to
me.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so that's, well, okay, in the movies, he's just an eco-terrorist. but maybe it's a more family-friendly motivation for all those little kids watching the Marvel movies.
I know.
But anyway, so Thanos eventually, through many shenanigans, gets hold of all 6 Infinity Stones, including the fact that he has to kill his daughter, Gamora. Well, his adopted daughter, Gamora, since he loves his adopted daughter more than his real daughter, which is kind of sad. So then Gamora dies.
That's
And then they have this big fight at the end in Wakanda, well, Thanos snaps. And everybody dies. Yeah, half the people die. Coincidentally, the 6 original Avengers are left alive, and all of the new people that they picked up along the way, like, get dusted. And we use the phrase dusted because they kind of like dissolve into gray dust. Yeah. Yep. So,
okay.
Everybody dies. So that's the end. That's exactly where Infinity War ends, and then Endgame picks up right there, basically. So at this point, Tony Stark is in a planet in space, because he took a spaceship there. Yeah, he went to pick a fight with Thanos there, and he's still stuck in space. But thankfully, this lady called Captain Marvel is gonna bring him back to Earth. Exactly. So then Tony gets back. All of the OG 6 Avengers are back together, and they decide to find Thanos and kill him. And they do, but it doesn't do anything because all the people are already dead. So then, there's this great big 5-year time skip, and everybody looks different, kind of.
Malted ice cream Thor.
Yes,
we need to insert a photo here.
So there's like normal Thor and fat suit Chris Hemsworth Thor. It's hilarious. He has the biggest. It's just, you have to see an image of it to really.
We'll put it on
Yeah,
screen.
and he's a Fortnite gamer now. Yeah, so basically everybody is different. And somebody made a really nice video about how each of the 6 Avengers at this point are exhibiting like the 6 different stages of grief. I don't remember exactly what they are. It's like denial, anger, something, depression, bargaining, acceptance, something along those lines. But at this point, I guess Tony is the one that's the best off, since Pepper didn't get dusted, so he got married, he had a kid. He has a really cute kid now. So he's just living a normal life. But then, something happens in the form of a tiny man about the size of an ant coming out of a portal. Ant-Man, was in the quantum realm this entire time. So he entered the quantum realm right before the snap happened, and he's been in there for 5 years, but for him, it only felt like 5 hours, because that's how quantum mechanics works. Down at the quantum realm, time and space don't really work the same way. So then he goes to the Avengers, and he's like, I know how to save everybody. Time travel. And that's exactly what they do. So they travel back in time,
Wow.
and they collect all of the Infinity Stones from different points in time where they have been, and then they get Hulk to put on the gauntlet and snap, and everybody comes back. But then, Thanos from the past also comes with them. So then they have this giant fight with computer-generated images
of course
again.
there's more fighting.
Yes. See, that's a staple
course.
of all the Avengers movies, is a giant fight at the
In
end.
the end.
Yeah.
And people
I
screaming
see.
Avengers Assemble.
Yes. This one time, and also Captain America gets to use Thor's hammer, which is really cool, because it shows that he's worthy. And yeah, so they fight. At the end, Tony dies because he sacrifices himself to use the gauntlet again. Rip. And then, so they have to go put back all of the Infinity Stones. And they send Captain America back in time to do it, but then he chooses to stay back in time and grow old together with his old love interest from his movie, Peggy Carter.
Oh.
So basically, both Iron Man and Captain America, who were like the first people in the franchise, are now dead. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's the end of Endgame.
Wow.
Okay, I have
So now it's officially the end.
not
Well,
really.
No.
Oh.
No.
Do you guys understand how much I don't understand?
It's because we've only explained like 6 out of the 24 movies. See, okay, I would definitely recommend Infinity War and Endgame to anybody who wants to see them, but you have to watch most of the other movies first. I would say there's a couple that you can skip, but you should watch them anyway, because most of them are pretty decent. Yeah.
Comment down below if you want a part 2, because I don't think we'll get to all of this.
I know. Well, I made a short list. Do you know how hard it was for me to make this list? There are 24 movies.
Okay, we're definitely making a part 2 whether you like it or not.
Okay, and speaking of the end, that's exactly why my next movie is on this list. So, Spider-Man Far From Home came out in 2019, just a couple of months after Avengers Endgame. And this movie is important because it's the beginning of the end after Endgame, in a way. It's like the movie that showed whether or not the MCU could still continue after ending such a big saga. And Spider-Man is like one of the newer generation heroes, because he's like still in high school, as he's supposed to be. Basically, oh yeah, so this movie was directed by John Watts. It stars Tom Holland as Peter Parker, as many people love, and Zendaya as MJ. Jon Favreau makes a reappearance as Happy Hogan. And Jake Gyllenhaal is the villain, Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. So in this movie, they take a trip to, I think, Italy? Yeah, they went to Venice. And so apparently there's this guy with a fishbowl on his head.
Accurate.
Accurate, I know. His name is Mysterio, and he's one of the classic comic book villains. They made him kind of different in the movies, though. In the comics, he's literally using magic. In the movies, he just uses, like, really advanced science cameras to make it seem like he's using magic. That's how it was explained, basically. But basically, S.H.I.E.L.D., well, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't really exist. Nick Fury needs Spider-Man to take care of Mysterio because he's doing villain things. But Spider-Man is like, no, I don't want to. Why? I'm just on a field trip. Why do I have to be Spider-Man when I'm on a field trip? But then Mysterio starts, like, getting close to the people that he loves, and then he's like, okay, I have to deal with this, and he does. The end.
Wow.
Kind of. Well, okay, there's
It's just like...
There's some nice interactions, because his relationship with Mysterio is they kind of had, like, a fatherly relationship, because at this point, Peter was really sad that Tony was dead. That's where the meme comes from, where it's like, everywhere I go, I see his face. And so finding another father figure in Quentin Beck kind of was like a relief for him, because Tony was definitely like, he doesn't have a father figure in his life anymore. His parents died when he was really young, and at this point Uncle Ben is already dead, so he just has his Aunt May, which is really not quite the same. So, but then in the end, he has to fight Mysterio, which was kind of a difficult thing to do for him. But he did. But the big part is Mysterio unveiled his secret identity to everybody, which for Spider-Man, this is a big thing. For most other heroes, like, everybody knows that Iron Man is Tony Stark. Everybody knows that Captain America is what's his name again?
Steve Rogers.
Yeah, Steve Rogers. My bad. But nobody knows Peter's secret identity except for, like, a very few people close to him, and Spider-Man has always been like that. It's like, you have to keep your loved ones safe, you can't tell them who you are. But now that everybody knows it's him, he's actually facing, like, charges for murder because he didn't kill him. People think he killed Mysterio. Mysterio actually got killed by the machines that he was using to, like, perform his magic. But that's gonna be one of the major plot points for the third Spider-Man movie, which is coming out this year, Spider-Man No Way Home. But yeah. So that's Far From Home, which is, okay, so Far From Home is actually the second one, because the first one is Homecoming, but I decided not to put it on this list because I didn't think it was as important. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I actually think this is a reasonable point, end off part 1. So, wow, that was a whole journey, and journey has not yet
I know.
finished. So please tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. for part 2. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you very much for listening. And
We'll
yeah,
see you next
see you
week.
next week for part 2.
Bye.
Bye.